Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Hello, Chiefs Kingdom. My name is Matt Connor. I'm here for a Monday midday Q&A. That rhymes. That actually came really naturally to me. I got no Chiefs gear on, but I do have my Tommy Townsend hair growing starter kit going on. Only about 10 inches more to go, Rapunzel style. Just talking on a midday here on a Monday, trying to make sense of the week in football, trying to make sense of the Chiefs in context of that week in football. And honestly, I didn't get to hang with you guys here, Addict Faithful or Chiefs Kingdom, because I had to write. So I was able to get on the post game, and then in terms of halftime show or post game thoughts, wasn't able to get out there. So as always, thanks for hanging out with me, hanging out with us. This is kind of funny hanging out with you guys on a Monday afternoon. Normally I'm editing and planning and filling in spreadsheets and cranking stuff out. But look, we all, it was a game to forget. The Chiefs always have a game to forget on the front end. After a weekend of reflection, though, here's what I'm thinking. And I don't know if this is what you guys are thinking too. The Broncos lost, the Chargers lost. So the AFC West, it's just like one game lead for the Raiders. That could have been a lot worse, right? The Bengals lost. We'll see how Buffalo looks tonight. All the horses are stumbling out of the gate in some weird way, it seems, except the Miami Dolphins and whatnot. But yeah, all the teams that you want to take seriously are looking that way. But even beyond that, I guess what I'm picturing is some things were kind of coming clear to me over the weekend, where it really feels like a lot of things that require a lot of time are all coming into view here at once, right? And so, for example, when you lose Eric Bieniemy on the sideline after 10 years, you're going to have, we realize that there's a lot of other veteran coaches there. Matt Nagy's been around. I'm not trying to say it's Andy Reid and a bunch of rookies. However, when you have a staple of communication there, a guy who's been in the room for 10 years, and now he's gone, that's going to take some time to adjust. When you lose your security blanket, the guy who knows exactly how your quarterback wants to play, when you lose that, you're going to need some time. And by the way, as I'm saying all this, if you have questions, if you have pressing questions, if you have things that you want to talk about, if you're interested in my take on it, whatever it is you want us to talk about as a group, let us know in the chat, fill that out, give us your questions. We'll get to those. That's why we're doing this as a Q&A. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, answer your questions there. But overall, here's what I'm thinking. We're gonna need a patient approach as fans. And that's because if you think about it, even take the defensive line. When you remove Carlos Dunlap, when you remove Frank Clark, when you remove Chris Jones, that's a total of 30 years. 30 years of pass rushing experience, 30 years of where should I be along the line, 30 years of have we seen this front before, 30 years of what do we think this quarterback is going to do, or what kind of pull is the guard going to have, etc., right? When you remove that from the equation, you're going to have a lot of younger guys up front who aren't going to respond as fast, aren't going to recognize as quickly, aren't going to process what technique to pull, those kinds of things. And that's happening all the way across the board in the defensive line, interior specifically. It's happening on the outsides as both Karlaftis and FAU are getting used to playing, more snaps, taking on more responsibility. It's happening in the wide receiver room where we have 7 guys, but so many of those guys have so little reps. And so, yes, it's important that these guys go and practice with Mahomes, right? Like I wrote the stories when that happened. I write the headline, these guys are practicing with Patrick Mahomes in the offseason. They're all going to Texas. Sky Moore's down there. Rashee Rice is down there. And we act like that gets them somewhere. And it does. It does a little bit. But there's no substitute for in-game reps. So that's why on Sunday you saw guys running less than successful routes, right? I mean, you saw some guys not exactly sure about spacing on the field. You saw some guys responding unintelligently to some zone coverage, not knowing kind of where to find the soft spot within the zone. And you have some other guys who aren't used to playing with Pat, and literally the play is never dead. And you saw some of those things happen there too. So all these guys, when you take Kadarius Toney out for weeks during the preseason, when you remove Charles Omenihu for the first half of the season, when Chris Jones is up in the stands with the Katz brothers versus lining up along the line, you lose that mentorship, you lose that experience. And next man up isn't always a crisp next man up. We use that phrase, but it really should be next man up stumbling or next man up sort of falling forward. That's the way these things happen. So will the Chiefs be able to defend their title this year? Totally. Will the Chiefs be the team that we thought or hoped they would be? Completely. I just think if Kelce's going to be out, if Jones is going to sit, if it's going to take the coaching staff time to figure out how to use their guys on both sides, it's going to take the receivers literal reps where they have to drop the ball and then develop some mental fortitude on the other side of that to get where Mahomes wants them to be. So it may not always be pretty, but it's going to require patience on the part of fans. If I had any major takeaway in the midst of all that, I think that's where I've landed, which is the early part of the season may not be pretty, but it doesn't mean that they won't get there, that there has to be an evaluation period. We have the NFL trade deadline still to come. There's a lot of young guys who just need this experience. So that's why I'm not really panicking or even all that worried about them losing a game like that with only one point versus a decent Lions team. Let's give them that. So, hey, not sure if any of you out there have some questions you'd like to ask, things you'd like to bring up. We're happy to do it. Daniel Wyand asks, we know Reed gives chances. What is the biggest change you see happening for a wide receiver? Will Justin Ross have more playing time? Sunday was real weird because there wasn't any receiver who got a dominant amount of snaps. I think the leader on snaps got 65% of snaps, right? So right then and there, you see there's no top tier option who's just out there at all times. And look, I don't know if this is going to be a popular take, but by the way, Daniel said I nailed his last name, Wyant. So I'm glad I didn't practice that, but I'm glad to do it for you. Here's what I think. I don't think this is going to be a popular take, but when people were touting the Chiefs wide receiver room, it was like, oh, how are people going to defend this when you have so many guys who can do so many things, who do so many different things? But the problem is that when you have 7 sort of specialists, you don't have any do-it-all kind of guy. So right now we're rotating guys in left and right, which means no one's getting a rhythm. And it also means that you kind of know when these guys are in what they're going to do and when, and I mean, at least what they're capable of. And there's just a sense there of we'd be much better off having sort of that top tier option who can stay in the game, be that security blanket, develop those reps, because right now we're just substituting hockey lines when they're all just kind of specialists. Rashee Rice seems to be one of the more well-rounded, Get him in there. Not, I've been surprised at that. I don't like all these guys can do something different approach. I don't. I like a couple of those guys underneath a couple guys who can do everything very well. I know that takes an investment. We didn't make that investment, but that'd be great. Appreciate Daniel for that question. And if you have thoughts on that yourself, I'd love to hear him. But Angry Drunken German said, how would you rate the play of our tackles? Well, it's so subjective, right? I even joked I'm going to set up a mute function on Twitter for Jawan Taylor for the season. I mean, you see this happen with Lane Johnson. Like, is Jawan Taylor cheating on every play? Are the refs avoiding calling penalties on 60-something snaps in the game? I mean, it's just so crazy that became the conversation it was. And yet when you look at it, you're also like, that's kind of weird. And if I was on the other team, I'd probably be complaining a lot about this too. It's for the Chiefs. So, who knows? I thought Taylor looked good. I thought Smith looked good. I think they're only going to look better as they learn to play against each other. The most frustrating things for me were the clear, you saw it when Donovan Smith got beat, which your instinct there is, I can't let my quarterback get sacked. I mean, that's instinctual, one time I have a son, he's 9. When he was like 2 or something, he was like falling off of a table once, and instinctually you reach and grab. Like, that's just human physical nature. That's what you're going to do. And to see Donovan Smith get beat and then called for that holding call, Trey Smith had a penalty as well. My bigger concerns there were for a team that's shooting themselves in the foot already, to have some of these penalties put them deeper in a hole just made it even worse. But I'm not sure I loved what I saw, but I liked it. And I think it could love it going forward. Not sure what you guys thought. Did you guys like the tackles? Let us know in the chat. We'd love to find that out. From yesterday, what team surprised you the most? Yeah, man, I'm gonna say the Dallas Cowboys. That was a drubbing. That was a divisional drubbing against the Giants. Could not believe it. I get why people are piling on the Giants that way. Kadarius Toney even felt comfortable enough to criticize them himself too. So yeah, that was. Is this going to be the year that the Cowboys put it all together? Who knows? What I would like to see, however, is a stronger play in the NFC. So if the Cowboys can kind of rise up and be that team, we see this every year. Who knows? But there are some really, really great players there. Joshua Beaker also brings up the Dolphins. Certainly. You got to love what they did. That was just a hell of a game. That shootout, those teams are going to be able to put a lot of points on the board, and together that was an exhilarating game. So totally agree there. Jesus says, David Potter says, should the Chiefs bring up a running back from the practice squad? My friend, I'm sure you may like Deneric Prince. You may like LaMichael Pirine. That's great if you do. But you're just asking the wrong guy. Honestly, I hate our running back room. I hate it. I don't get it. I don't get what all the buzz is about with a lot of the guys in there in the preseason. I'm over Clyde. Obviously, we all are. But I also didn't see what made those other two guys so special. I like McKinnon. I think he does a lot of things well that this team needs. I think Pacheco was a great find for a 7th rounder. But I think the ceiling could be raised overall at the position with a greater investment. And I was ready to when I made my 53-man predictions and I was talking about it with Sterling on the podcast. I said even then, I said I would keep 2 of these guys and I'd flush the rest out. Give me a veteran, give me someone else from some other team, but I just don't get what makes this special. So when it comes to a running back maybe coming in, and being an addition, yeah, I don't know. This week's important. Let me remind you this. And by the way, if you're still out there, if you're just tuning in, if you want to submit some questions, we're happy to talk about whatever you guys want. We love talking Chiefs news, Chiefs Kingdom. One important thing this week to remember, and this is across the NFL, veteran contracts are not guaranteed for the full season if they sign after week 1, which is obviously tomorrow morning because Monday Night Football happens tonight. When a veteran signs a deal after week 1, of course, they're paid as long as they're on the roster. But what that allows a team to do is, like, let's say the Chiefs were like, we love Felix Anudike-Uzomah. We think B.J. Thompson could turn into something. But we want to sign Carlos Dunlap for another year. Now, but we don't want to do so. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying maybe this could be their posture. You could bring in Carlos Dunlap after week 1. Then the pressure's on Dunlap to remain productive for another year, well into his 30s, by the way. So the pressure's on him, not the team. And then that gives the Chiefs a veteran who can produce now, which covers you without having to depend on your youthful guys who aren't there yet. But then it also allows you to save some money if, let's say, by the bye week, you're looking at FAU and going, he's as good as Dunlap. We're maybe at midseason we stop giving Dunlap the reps that he's taking from the young guys because the young guys are now actually good enough. So at that point, you can cut the veteran and only pay him for the services rendered versus him counting all the way through the rest of the year against the cap. So this week, you're going to see probably multiple signings by multiple teams in some areas that they've been wanting to cover, and yet they did not want to have to go all the way in on a veteran. For me, I would totally love to see Carlos Dunlap come in. He was good last year. He's actually good at against the run. I mean, he's a complete defender. He's not like just a situational pass rusher. And having him in the trenches there, especially with Omenihu out, makes so much sense. But it's after the fact of week 1, so that gives Brett Veach, a little bit of the leverage there. I don't know that you need it. I would probably like to see Dunlap around for the full season, but I get why teams do that. So, that's what I think. That was a long answer to David Potter. Should the Chiefs bring up a running back from the practice squad? I get what you're saying about the run game. Although remember this in the run game too, and this is what happened on Thursday. The first 2 touches of the game were to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't think we saw, and I may be misremembering, but I don't even think we saw Pacheco until the 3rd series. Is that right? At least with any sort of regularity. And even then there was no regularity. And so it was like Pacheco didn't get going until later on when he clearly has the most, he brings the most, the most dynamism to the position of anyone there. And then Clyde being mixed in early and then kind of there's no real running game overall to speak of. Mahomes was by far the best runner and it was just there was some odd game plan to me, honestly, on Sunday. And look, those guys are geniuses. I don't know what I'm talking about, but just from a fan, just as a longtime watcher, there were some things I didn't get. And part of it was the usage of the running back room. I'll leave it at that. But David, if you have a running back you like, let us know. Jesus Perez says, when do you think Kelce will be back? I don't know. The latest reports came out today just saying as long as the swelling is down. As long as the swelling is down. Now, Jay Glazer gave a report, probably a lot of you have already seen this, that he had some perspective on the original injury, saying that the Chiefs were actually worried at first that it was of the serious, like, season-ending variety, and then now it's not. It's a, quote, deep bone bruise. Whatever that means for you is what that means for you. I mean, I think we all know what a bone bruise is. It can lead to a fracture if you put more weight on it. I mean, like, all those kind of things. Like, it's not an injury to mess with. I was against playing Kelce in the first place because, again, you're all about the long term here. It's all about the long term. And so you don't want a player like Kelce to have anything that even could be aggravated down the road. But Kelce was already fighting to play. He's been cleared if he feels all right. So if the swelling's down, you've had 10 days off. I would think he's going to be there. If not, you got to figure out a way to make Noah Gray more of a focus there. Seeing Blake Bell be a primary read on any play, especially that's not like a belldozer play, maddening. I don't get it. The adjustments were weird. There. But we hope to see Kelce back. That's for sure. We saw what life is like without him. It's going to take significant curve. So yeah. Becky Pigtail says, I hope they let his knee heal completely before having Kelce play. Totally agree. Jesus Perez says Andy Reid will have a better game plan this week with or without Kelce. I agree with you. I think there was some curveballs here. I think there's some figuring out going on. I think, I think Reid's going to be better for this one. I don't know why. I think the Kelce injury threw some things really off. Spags looked ready. That whole defense looked ready. Blew my mind how good that defense was. But yeah, let's move on to the next question. Any concerns with the defense this week? Blitzing Goff a ton is a lot different than blitzing Lawrence. A lot of holes created by the blitz. Totally agree. And the Chiefs are going to, look, they handled the Jags last time in the divisional round of the playoffs. No doubt they can do it again. What they didn't have before was Ridley, right? And having a guy like Calvin Ridley is, it just makes everything easier on everyone else. It's having Travis Kelce, and suddenly everything's easier for everyone else. Ridley looked like he had been in that offense for quite some time. Doug Peterson knew exactly what he was doing there. In terms of like having him ready, bringing him in, he had that offense ready to go. I loved Ridley in Atlanta. I was dying for the Chiefs to make that kind of trade themselves. It was a roll of the dice. It's an odd situation. But yeah, I think that I don't know. That's a tough call. I'm not concerned about the defense. Look, here's what I think. I think the secondary is good enough to hang with anyone. I think it's a sleeper entry for maybe the best secondary in the NFL. There are others that probably have more talent that deserve that, but the Chiefs should be in that conversation because of McDuffie, Snead, Reed, Cook, Edwards, Watson, William. I mean, it's so full. It's a full stew, if you will, and without any real weak link. And so the Chiefs can play really deep. They can, with guys who can stay with their receiver long enough to allow maybe a mediocre pass rush up front to get it done. The Jags, I think they're going to test Anton Harrison on the right side. He's a first rounder, but he's a rookie. That'll be interesting to see. So, I don't know. I don't know what to expect there. I'd like to do more of a deep dive myself this week into the Jags offensive front, see kind of what changes they've made besides just switching out Taylor with Harrison, before I have like a greater answer to that. But that's a great question. And appreciate that. Josh Beaker wants to know, wait, didn't someone ask me like what shampoo I use? Was that in the questions? Is Richard our producer? Yeah, anyway, I don't know. Someone asked me what shampoo I use, and it's actually, I should get it. It's like a tiny blue bottle of like great stuff, and I forget the name of it, but it's like some boutique-y person told me about it, and I actually foolishly spent money on it, and then now I like love this stuff. It's called like Round, or I don't know. I'll figure it out. It's a stupid. I shouldn't even brought this up anyway. I'm not even close to Tommy Townsend yet. Anyway, would you make a trade for Mike Evans? Look, who doesn't love the idea of bringing in Mike Evans? Who doesn't love the idea of I'd love to trade back for Tyreek Hill. I'd love to, look, we all want to trade for that top number one wide receiver. You know, we'd all love the room to pay that guy, whatever. The Chiefs have made their bed with wide receivers. They got them. They've made 2 straight second-round picks. You're going to live with them. They made the trade for Kadarius Toney. You're going to live with that. You've nurtured Justin Ross. You've brought him along. He's going to get his chances. They're going to live or die by these young guys for a while. So at the very least, I think we need another month to a month and a half to see what these guys bring and how they grow with Mahomes, and as Kelce comes back, what your needs are. And then around mid-October, I think is the moment that you can start to go, okay, how realistic does this team need to be to make an acquisition in the passing game? What is that going to look like? And then from there, I think you got to really look at, if you were going to look at, okay, we need a major import here. I think that conversation starts with Hollywood Brown. I mean, because at that point you're saying, would Andy Reid love to have Deshaun Jackson on his team? Because the answer is Hollywood Brown. I mean, he is. And I feel bad for Hollywood Brown because he went from this run-heavy Ravens team for 3 years to drying out in the desert. I mean, this guy wouldn't even know. It would like playing for the Chiefs, playing under Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball next to Travis Kelce would make Hollywood Brown a household name. And he would feel like a kid at a theme park, like just having so much fun. Like as good as Hollywood Brown has looked at times at the NFL level, and he's looked very good at times. He's had some very good seasons, but he would have Pro Bowl to All Pro potential immediately in an offense like this. He's only 26. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I don't know if Arizona is going to come off him. On that note, don't know what he would cost. Don't know if the Chiefs could pay. I mean, there's so many elements there. But for me, it would be less about Mike Evans, who, by the way, their GM, Bucks GM, came out today. He said, I'm not trading him. Mike Evans was Jason Licht's first. He said, my first round draft. He's my first pick ever. He's a community staple. He's a Bucks legend now. We're not dealing him. So, maybe we could stop talking about that. But if we're not going to do that, I love Hollywood Brown. Don't know if you guys like Hollywood Brown, but if you do, let's talk about it. What are the keys to beating the Jags this week? I think the defense is so good at the second and the third levels. I love the second level here. I think they're going to be able to hold Etienne to a good. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get all that people think he could there, like breaking big gains. I think they can move the chains for sure. I think the Chiefs run D up front can be soft. Will we see Neil Farrell for the first time? He was inactive last week after the Chiefs traded for him. So maybe that's a move that they make. Naughty, man, I thought Derek Naughty stepped up a little bit last week, and he deserves some real kudos for a couple stops that I saw that were better. And I'll say this, I'm going to go back on what I said, and I don't mean to go back on what I said because I love the addition of Ridley. But I've also heard a lot of people making the Jags like vast array of weapons out to be something. And I'm not sure that I buy that either. It's like a middling group to me. I like Christian Kirk. Zay Jones doesn't move the needle for me. They have short yardage issues too. That's why they drafted Tank Bigsby in the third round. Yeah, we'll see. So if you could contain Ridley, the Jags are a good team. It's all about Trevor Lawrence. Again, I've said this before. I said it on Twitter today, yesterday. I think Trevor Lawrence will end this season as a top 3 NFL quarterback. I don't care who else is up there. It's Mahomes, Lawrence, and then your choice of Allen or Herbert or Burrow. Or maybe Lamar Jackson if he has a magical comeback, whatever. But whatever you want to choose, I think Lawrence is going to force his way into that conversation by the end of this year. So maybe it's good that we're playing them on the front end. We'll see how that goes. Stacy Smith. What's up, Stacy? Says, do you think Brett Veach was overconfident in the evolution of Tony and Moore in year 2? No, I don't. And here's why. I think that I believe very much in the smoke that you heard this offseason. So I think that the Chiefs were legitimately interested in Odell Beckham Jr. I think the Chiefs were in on and had trade offers out for DeAndre Hopkins. They've been in on wide receivers each of the last 2 years and have come away with none. I mean, they were in on Josh Reynolds. They were in on, oh gosh, I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but there have been some bigger names that have just not happened. I think that's because the Chiefs aren't willing to pay more than other teams. And so I think, when I say he's interested in adding those guys, it's at a certain price. But I just don't think that I think that also shows, though, that he knows there was a need there. And I think it's why they could go shopping by the trade deadline. So, when Brett Veach says, I think Kadarius Toney could be a number 1 wide receiver, Brett Veach also said that Orlando Brown Jr. was interested in a contract with him, or that Tyreek Hill was going to be here for life. We hear a lot of things from Brett Veach that aren't necessarily true, which, cross our fingers, is what worries me about Chris Jones. But that's that would be my take on that. Maybe it was some overconfidence, and maybe that's what we're seeing. Maybe that's what we're seeing now. But I also think the receivers are going to get better. You can't get worse. Joshua Clayton says, do you think they will use Tranquil more this game? I was surprised at how little of Tranquil we saw compared to what we thought was going to be the case. They have the linebackers to rotate there. There is not enough reps to go around for the quality they have and the depth. Somebody is going to get the short end of that stick. No way around it. And so, I was a little bit surprised there. If you're asking that out of surprise, as if, hey, I thought I'd see more Tranquil last game. Are we going to see him more this game? Who knows? At the same time, it's Tranquil's first game in Spags' system last time. I mean, but maybe there's a little bit of a learning curve here. Maybe there's a sense of, hey, we know we'll see more and more of him as we go. But yeah, I thought so too. I think maybe a little bit much has been made of Tranquil and what he could do. I mean, I'm not saying he's not great, but even on some of our own podcasts, when I hear all of us talk about Tranquil, I just think, oh my gosh, are we we're like really talking this guy, we're like really talking this guy up, and he signed a 1 year, 3 year, it's a 1 year, $3 million deal away from the Chargers. I mean, I do believe when he says he could have had a little bit more money or had other offers. I believe that. But if those offers were really big, he would have gone with those offers. It was his first payday. So you don't spurn your first great payday unless the other offers really weren't that much better. So, yeah, let's tap the brakes on Tranquil. I think he can do a lot of things well. Is he a master of any of them? Is he going to hit a Pro Bowl? I don't know. He's not Derek Jones he's not Derek Johnson. But he is a very good linebacker who joined this team to make the whole unit great. I love that. It'll be interesting to see what he's actually capable of doing when playing in rotation with these guys. So, we'll see there. Is 1 sack for the defense concerning? Jesus Perez wants to know. Maybe, I'm certainly not the first person to say this. Jesus, I'm sure you've read this. You know this already, but sacks are that stat that, they can come in bunches. It's like the difference between a sack and a pressure is often a millisecond. It's often just a step in one direction or the other. That's what makes it such an odd stat to hang your hat on for pass rushers, to say like this guy's no good versus this guy's good is just about sacks. I mean, that I think that's why the conversation exists of, hey, we need better metrics or better levels of understanding about how to evaluate pressuring the quarterback, because a sack versus a pressure versus a hit, like we just need better rates than that, or we need to elevate the metrics that are lesser known to be more mainstream, instead of saying sacks like all over the place in the middle of a broadcast. Let's bring up pressure win rates, etc. So that's why, one sack in one game is not concerning for me, as long as they're generating consistent pressure and forcing, look, they forced the Lions to do what they wanted to do. Spags came in with a game plan, and the execution for most of the game, until that defense was too gassed and too tired, they executed that game plan incredibly. And so, if anything, I have to tip my hat to this defense and say, incredible. So, I'm all in on it. Some of you disagree here. Sacks, Daniel Wyatt says sacks weren't an issue. We held the Lions to 14 points. This defense wins most games. Yeah, the defensive play in this game will win most games. However, like, we can have some disagreements here. Stacy Smith says it's very concerning. Against this conference's best opponents, that's not going to get it done. Allen, Burrow, Rodgers, Herbert will pick you apart if they can stand flat in their spot. I think that's what I was getting at when I say, just because maybe a sack wasn't there, does that mean that a player can stand flat in the spot and get away with it? I don't know. I saw pretty good pressures on Burrow at times. Karlaftis had some great moments. And DK Uzoma had a couple great moments. He had a couple good pressures. I was like, man, love it. Love seeing that early on from this kid, and I'm hoping he can grow into that. By the way, Mike Dana had a hell of an effort. Sliding inside. He's just the glue. It's hard not to love a guy like Mike Dana. He's a contract year this year. Look, we talk about Willie Gay being a contract year. We talk about L'Jarius Sneed being a contract year. Of course, we talk about Chris Jones being in a contract year. But honestly, I mean, of course, I want one or more of those guys back. I like all those guys. But there needs to be space in the room for conversation about bringing Mike Dana back, because I remember interviewing Michigan's defensive coordinator right when Dana came out in the draft, right? And I remember doing this interview with him, and he was saying, I said, hey, the Chiefs just drafted Dana. What can you tell me about him? And he said, look, we took him on from Central Michigan. He was a star at Central Michigan, like double-digit sacks a year, Central Michigan, right? With the Chippewas, is that what that is? Anyway, so here he comes for the Wolverines, and he just wanted to prove that he could play at that level, at that level of college before going pro. He comes in, and I remember the DC there tells me, he's like, all we had to ever do was tell him one, he's coming to ask us, what can I do? What can I learn? Then when you tell him, he does it all. He does it exactly the way you tell him the first time. They said he's a total sponge. And so his main point was his best football is always ahead of him, because he's always learning, always growing, always, like, whatever a coaching staff tells him to do, he's going to do it. And we've seen Dana at the pro level. You look at him and you're like, his measurables aren't off the charts. It's not like he's one of those stories where he hasn't like blossomed into an all-pro. But what he's grown into is a versatile guy who can play inside and out. Very comfortable inside, right? In fact, he's probably better inside, because he's not quite athletic enough to get to he needs a more direct line with his athleticism. That said, he holds his own outside. He's stronger against the run than what I thought he was going to be. And now here he is, helping to fill in the gaps and You had 5 sacks last year. You need those kind of guys. So I'm talking way too long about Mike Dana, but alas, here we are. Mike, if you're out there, I hope the Chiefs bring you back next year, and make you part of that contract year. I hope they bring you back. So, yeah, folks, I'm going way over what I thought I would, honestly, but you guys are just awesome to kind of hang out with here. Let me do one more question here, and then, do you think the Chiefs, Gary Hansen, do you think the Chiefs will throw more screen passes considering the wide receiver drops last game? I don't know. In fact, there's a part of me instinctually that thinks the opposite of that. There's a part of me that thinks, actually, I think he'll go right back to Tony quickly. I think he goes right back to Sky Moore quickly, to try to get those guys mentally. It's one thing to tell a guy, like I think I'm not sure if you watched Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso had that great, as a fake coach telling his fake soccer, football players, be like a goldfish, have a short memory, be like a goldfish. Like it's easy to tell players that, but then you get online, you go on social media, you see all the, Sports Center, you see the highlights, you look at the memes, etc. Like that's harder to do than we maybe give credit for. And developing that mental toughness is going to really take some effort. But the easiest way for Kadarius Toney to put last week behind him, the easiest way for some of these other guys who had drops, because it wasn't just Kadarius, by the way, the easiest way to put that behind you is to achieve current success. Past failure, the easiest way to get over it is current success. And no one's going to know that better than this coaching staff, which is let's get these guys current success as fast as we can. So I don't think there's going to be an avoidance of, I think, until we know that that's a permanent weakness. I think it's only a weakness because of a lack of experience, a lack of reps, a lack of time together. So, yeah, a great question. That's just what I think. And just realize I really don't know what I'm talking about. So, yeah. Hey, look, all of you out there, we so appreciate any of you ever hanging out with us. My name is Matt Connor, and you can see me and Sterling Holmes tomorrow night, by the way, on the Arrowhead Addict podcast that we have normally on Tuesdays at 5:00. Hang out with Adam Best on Wednesday, Patrick Allen on Thursday. Folks, the Chiefs are, Jesus Perez just said it, and I agree. The Chiefs are still the Super Bowl favorites. Abso-freaking-lutely. I can't agree with that more. The Chiefs will get to where we want them to go. They just started out on a wrong foot. Be patient. Give them time. They're going to be right there. We're all over it. So, yeah, until tomorrow, we'll see you guys later on. Thanks for hanging.